So my name's Amy Ahiga, and I went to Kenya in 2008 on my own with a British organization, and I went to go live with a Kenyan family, and I was there about 8 months, and I got a good experience of what Kenyan life was like. So most people came kind of for short-term volunteering, but I was around when they all went back to school and back from summer break, and so there weren't a lot of Americans anymore, and so it really forced me to be friends with the local people, and I think that was really good because it gave me a different kind of perspective and a different understanding, and some of those initial relationships that I made back in 2008 are still people that I know today. So when I was there, we were doing children's ministry around the city in different orphanages and children's homes, and then I would go to Kibera a couple days a week. And Kibera is the biggest slum in East Africa, so there's estimates that it's anywhere from 250,000 to 1 million people that live in this 1.5 square area. And people live in tin shacks with tin roofs and mud and stick houses. There's no sewage there's no sewage system, so there's just raw sewage running in the street. There's no trash pickup, so the trash mounts up everywhere. It smells really bad. Recently, it started to develop a little bit, so there's electricity. But when I first went to Kibera, I went the first day with a group of people, and we volunteered at a school, and we came in a van, and we came out, and that was pretty easy because you could kind of leave it quickly behind. But the more that I started going there and just experiencing it, the harder it became for me, because when you look around, there's hardship everywhere, and I didn't really know what to do with that or how to handle that. And our culture here is such a fix-it culture. You know, we want to come up with ways to fix things, and so I started doing anything I could just to avoid being in the slums. And I think it's funny that God kind of brings you back to these things that maybe you don't want to do initially. And so in 2011, I started working with Small World Connections, and I came back to Kenya with my sister and a friend, and we would be part of this prayer group for women who were HIV positive living in the slums. And we would wait for the tea to boil, which takes a really long time if you're cooking on a charcoal stove. And we would play Jenga with them because you don't need to speak English to play Jenga. You can just pull out the tiles. And in the midst of that, we would pray for these women, and they had very similar stories where they couldn't send their kids to school, they couldn't afford to feed them, they couldn't just make basic ends meet. And then one day, this lady was always weaving baskets. Her name was Emily, and we had other ladies who were making paper beads, and that was kind of this turning point of, wow, people have these talents and these abilities, but they just don't have a way to sell their products. And so we loaded up everything. It's okay, buddy. We loaded up everything into our suitcase, and we came back home, and that was kind of the beginning. It just started with one suitcase and one little idea of maybe we can do something to help these people to have a long-term sustainable income. And it had started out that I thought that we were going to teach the ladies how to make paper beads, and we brought all these materials there to make them. And when we got there, this woman pulled all these beads out of her purse, and she said, "Like this?" And for me, that was really humbling. And she said, "We already know how to make them. We just don't know how to sell them." And I think sometimes it's easy for us to think that we have all the answers, but that's not really true. People are maybe living in different circumstances than what we're in, but they have talents, they have abilities. God's gifted them in different kind of ways, so sometimes they just need an opportunity to be able to use that. Wanted to do something more long-term, and so we really believe that that can be done through the context of education and employment opportunities in a Christian context that gives hope. And so when we said yes to those people in in Kibera to taking their stuff, all those women, and in our suitcase. That was kind of the initial trial. So we came back with all these things. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we just opened our suitcase to people, and the response was really positive. And so the next year we decided, okay, we're gonna go back, and we don't know what we're going to do, but we think we're gonna get some of these women and see if they want to come and make products like it's a job, a real thing. And my now husband let us use his living room, and it was very small space. You could almost reach out your hands and touch both sides of the walls, but we had a sewing machine in there, and we had people making beads, and we were cutting fabric on the floor. And so that was kind of the beginning, and then we went home that summer, and then we decided, like, okay, is this going to be something real? What's the next thing? So that year we became a nonprofit, and we called it Grain of Rice Project, and the name comes from the story of Mulan, where the emperor tells the people that a single grain of rice can tip the scale and make the difference. So I'm just one person, you're just one person. We can't save the world, but we can do small things that give people an opportunity, and those spill over and they help other people around them, and so they start to empower the whole community to make change. And that was really the idea, because we believe that the change is really going to come from local solutions, from people on the ground. And so the idea is always to empower local Kenyans, and how can they help create change in their environment. I think it's about listening to what the needs of the people are, because sometimes as an outsider, maybe I think that they're one way, but maybe they're something completely different. And so I think just being in tune with what people need, and understanding their culture and their way of life. And so I think the first thing that people really need is hope. You know, maybe they come from this situation where they've grown up their whole life, and it seems like it's always going to be this way, and that they're never going to be able to get out. And so every day that we are with the artisans, they read the Bible together, pray together, and it's a way just to encourage them that, you know, God sees you, that it doesn't matter where you're born, you're still important. And so creating that sense of value in them is important. And one way that we're doing that also is every time the artisans make a product, we're sharing their story with people here. So on the tags, it has a picture and the story of the person that made the piece, because to me it's not just a bracelet or a piece of jewelry, but it really is about the person behind it. And we want that to be communicated to people on here, so that the person in Kenya feels like they have value, like they're important. So it's not just a job, you're sharing your talent and your skill. Well, first I would say that, you know, there wasn't like a training manual for what to do, and so there's been a lot of failure in the process. And I think that when I first went to Kenya, I thought that I was just going temporarily. I didn't know that I was going to be coming back over and over. And I kind of realized that it's easy to go once, but it's good, but it's hard to go over and over, because you see the nitty-gritty, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And you have to persevere through those challenges. And yeah, so I remember my grandma a couple years telling me, like, so are you like done going to Africa? And I said, no, like, this is really on my heart. These are the people that I love, that I care about. And I think that sometimes people disappoint you, and I disappoint them, and sometimes there's maybe misunderstandings, and sometimes the fact that there's no electricity, or the water is brown, or it goes out that day. I've spent a considerable amount of time living on the edge of the slum while I'm there, and it's not easy, but I think it's good because it helps you to really understand a better perspective of what people are going through on a daily basis, even in more extreme circumstances. So, you know, people are messy. We're not easy people, and so when you go long term, you see some of the messiness, but that's where God can really work. And I think that that's when you start to see lasting, long-term change, is when you go back over and over to the same community and the same people. So I think that it's going well because we've had enough time there on the ground to really see relationships nurture and grow, and it takes a while to see fruit, but eventually you do. So like one lady, Pamela, who we started with, she was able to save up money and purchase land and build a small house in Western Kenya, and that was really exciting just to see like something really tangible that had come out of the process. And sometimes it's less tangible, but it's still there. So I think it's all about just giving it time to see the fruit and staying committed and following through. So it's not easy sometimes. It's a long distance. It's hard to get there, but if you stick it out and you really just keep praying and asking God, the direction. And also we've had some really great people that we're working with on the ground helping lead, and I think that's really nice when you have people who are really invested in the ministry, from their heart, that they really believe in the things that you're doing and they can see it to its success. I think that's important. Well, I think that it's really important. So for my son, Ellis, he has family on both sides of the globe now. So you have family in the U.S. and in Kenya. And our prayer for him is always that he'll be a unifier. So we always pray for him to be a world changer. He's tired, but we believe he's going to make a difference. And I think it's great because he'll have understanding of both places. And so, he's going to have a really unique experience of being exposed to other people, other food, other languages, and just seeing that there's multiple ways to do something. There's not just one right way. Even if it's different, it's okay, and there's other ways. And I think for my husband, it's been good because, a lot of times in the part of Kibera where we are, there's only these two tribes, and they're kind of the rival tribe of my husband. And so we're trying to bring together lots of different tribes and groups of people so that there can be a sense of peace and of working together. And so for them accepting him and him accepting them, I think that's really important for the future of Kenya and the future of Kibera, and trying to create a sense of peace and a sense of belonging no matter what tribe or group that you're from.